I just finished The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea by Yukio Mishima. Someone on here actually recommended me this book, and I'm glad because it's not something I would have gone out of my way to read. And we really do live in a world of echo chambers where it's so easy to only hear things that sort of you agree with or things you're comfortable with. And so that sort of becomes your worldview, and that you don't believe that anything outside of that exists, or if it does, it's pure evil. So I'm grateful to read things that I would never have generally read. So why wouldn't I have read this? Well, Yukio Mishima, he actually popped up in one of my Japanese history courses. He was a right-wing ultranationalist. He he came from that generation, that post-war generation in Japan, where he was a sort of a teen during the war, and he, as a sort of a teenage boy, he probably was caught up in sort of the rhetoric of the time, and this belief in a Japanese spirit, and the divine emperor and all that stuff. But then he becomes an adult just as the Americans are conquering Japan, and so as a young adult he's sort of surrounded by all these broken men and sort of a broken nation, which he sort of feels like his nation and the people in it have let him down, and have let Japan down. And so he's one of those sort of reactionaries that he wants to go back to sort of the pre-war Japan, or even the Japan of the war, the Imperial Japan, and sort of rewrite the mistakes of their defeat by the Americans. And so he actually attempted a coup in, I can't remember if it was the 60s or the 70s, and obviously it failed. It was just like him and a handful of other dudes that tried to get the military to rise up and get rid of the American created constitution and reinstate the emperor as their sort of supreme leader. And yeah, it didn't go well. He ended up committing ritual suicide at the end of that. So not the sort of guy who I'd be like, man, I want to read a book that he wrote. What's he have to say? But maybe I should. Maybe I should be like, this guy that I really would never ever agree with politically, what does he have to say? And so that's this book, partially. I mean, I'm reading into it a lot of sort of autobiographical stuff that's not necessarily true, but death of the author, in this case he's been dead for quite a while, too bad. So I did enjoy it. It was a good book. It did have wonderful prose, which, themes and ideologies aside, if your book has wonderful prose, I'm probably going to like it. For example, here's a sentence, it's also a paragraph, describing a sort of a harbor scene in summer in Japan. It says that the summer morning lay as thin as a dazzling sheet of hammered metal across the colossal anvil of the harbor scene. And to me, that sort of the sun as a dazzling sheet across the hammered metal, that evokes not just visual images, but sort of I can feel the heat of like a sun on thin metal, but the sun as thin metal. Yeah, beautiful prose. So the story itself is kind of interesting. We have three POV characters. We have a mother, a early 30s mother who is widowed. Her husband died, I believe, in the war. She's very well to do. She runs a very fancy luxury shop. And her son, who is 13. And also the third is this guy Ryuji, who was a sailor who falls in love with the woman Fusuko. So the mother Fusuko, the sailor Ryuji, and the son Noboru. So to me, I'm really reading the author into the son Noboru and sort of his gang. So he's part of this weird gang that's they have, I don't want to say amoral, but they have a very weird sort of philosophy of life. They have this sort of chief who's the gang leader, and you think like a gang is like they're going out smashing stuff up and being hooligans, but they go off on their own and sort of sit and talk philosophy, and very, very strange, weird philosophy, where they sort of have ideals and see the world that they live in as not reaching those ideals. They complain a lot about fathers. One of the big themes is that fathers are the most evil people and the most evil things in this universe, and they've caused so many problems, which again I'm reading into that as Mishima himself seeing sort of the generation before him as having let Japan down. And it gets extremely dark. So for instance, at one point they go through this ritual of sort of, I don't even know why or how to describe why it's done, but it's sort of a ritual murder. They find a cat, or like a kitten, and Noboru is asked to kill it. So he takes it and he throws it against a log multiple times until it finally dies, and then they cut it open and dissect it. And in that way, that's sort of, I don't know if it's like control over life, or showing that they can do things like kill or for whatever reason, but they do that, and it does come up again at the end of the novel. So I just want to quote one of another wonderful line that the chief, the 13-year-old chief, says to sort of the gang of kids. No adult is going to be able to do something we couldn't do. There's a huge seal called impossibility pasted all over this world, and don't ever forget that we're the only ones that can tear it off once and for all. Which I love that line, that a huge seal called impossibility pasted over the world. Like, what is possible and what is impossible is sort of decided by adults, but kids sort of have the ability to remove that seal. And things that are impossible don't apply to kids because they're not, I guess, jaded. They don't have all the experiences of an adult, so they don't really know what's possible and impossible. To them, life is still fresh and new, and impossible means nothing to them. This is kind of how I took it, if you want to take it in a positive way. Anyway, so we also have Ryuji, who's this sailor. He's also mid-30s. He's always lived alone. He's not a bit of a loner. He's a loner. He lives basically all his life on the ship, traveling across the world. He doesn't even get along with his other sailors. He keeps to himself. He saved up tons of money because he never spends it. He's not, I don't want to say he's coasting through life, but he sort of feels that he has this greatness in him, this ability for glory, and he's sort of just waiting for that to happen. He's got a high opinion of himself. And in this novel, he comes ashore in I believe it's Tokyo or one of the cities close to Tokyo, and he meets this woman Fusuko. So Fusuko's Noboru's mother. So they sort of have a fling, and obviously he has to go back to sea, so they know it's not going to last long. But because of that, it sort of makes it more special. And yeah, Noboru sort of loves this guy, thinks he's the coolest. He's a hero to Noboru. This man that comes in from the sea, sort of exists on land temporarily, and then goes off once again and sort of becomes the hero. And that's the first half of this book. It's the first half of this book is titled Summer. So that was summer, that happened in the summer. The second half of the book is called Winter. And Ryuji once again comes back to land and meets up with Fusuko, and he sort of begins to have doubts about his life. He's sort of spent his whole life at sea. He's been waiting for this moment of glory or something to come to him, but he's becoming jaded. He's thinking, it's, I need to grow up now. I need to settle down. This is never going to happen. And so he decides to give up the sea and not to go back on his ship. And he and Fusuko get engaged and get married. And to Noboru, this is sort of the ultimate sin. Remember, his sort of philosophy is one that all fathers and father figures are evil. And so now Ryuji is no longer this sailor, this distant heroic figure that's off traveling the world. He's given that up willingly and is staying to be a father figure for Noboru. And so he begins to hate him, and he tells his gang, and his gang's like, all right, we know what we have to do. There's only one way we can free him and make him a hero again. And their plan is to kill this guy, to drug him until he's asleep, kill him, and like dissect him and cut him open just like they did the cat. And so that's what happens. The very, very end of the book, these boys they're going along with murder because they believe that giving this guy a heroic death will sort of put the world right, and how everything is wrong with the world. And they also know that they can get away with murder because according to Japanese law, that children under the age of 14 cannot be prosecuted or something like that. And all of these boys are like a month away from turning 14, so they believe that this is sort of their last chance at freedom, their last chance to do something like murder. And so yeah, they the very end of the book, they've placed a whole bunch of sleeping pills in this tea. The chief's putting on his latex gloves and he's getting his scalpel out, and Ryuji's sitting there. Ostensibly he was taken down to sort of tell these boys stories about the sea, and as he's looking out on the sea, he's sort of regretting giving it all up for this woman and for sort of a stable life, and he's reminiscing about the sea and thinking about that glory. And then he sort of absentmindedly takes the tea and starts drinking it. And then the book ends there. So it doesn't get into the gory details, but of course it's assumed that he was killed by this gang of boys. So it's a very dark book, but like I said, I think it mirrors a lot of Mishima's beliefs that sort of the previous generation had failed him, and that there's a need for a new young generation to sort of take the reins and do drastic things to sort of set things right. There's also a big love story component to this between Fusuko and Ryuji, and I think that's Like, it's a beautiful, well-written love story. Like, they're really in love, and I don't know, I really like that aspect of it as well. It's really short. It's less than 200 pages, which, again, the perfect size for a novel. Less than 200 pages. Bash this thing out in a day or two. Yeah, something I never would have read. Very dark, very unexpectedly dark. I sort of had the sense once they killed the cat that this is where it's going. They're going to kill someone. I assumed it was Ryuji, but at one point I was like, well, maybe they're going to kill Fusako, and that will sort of push Ryuji back out to sea. But I knew something like that was going to happen. So yeah, that was The Sailor Who Fell from Grace by Yukio Mishima.